You're entering the MSP Zone, a podcast for the managed services community, covering news, analysis, and interviews from around the globe. Elevate your MSP game by staying in the MSP Zone. And now, your host, Charles Weaver.
What's up, everybody? It's been a while since we've had a just myself talking, not having a guest on the program, and not complaining. We've had a slew of guests for the last couple of weeks, and actually have a lot more exciting guests who will be coming on, including I don't know if I should say this, but we're trying to get Fred Vocola from CEO of CISA on to talk about the Datto acquisition, which I know a lot of MSPs have been thinking about that and have a lot of questions that they've been asking me, and I'm sure they've been asking a lot of people. And so hopefully we'll get Fred on the program and be able to talk to him and get his perspective on that. No matter which way you look at it, it's a pretty momentous, significant deal in our profession. So it's worth talking about. Today, however, we have some very important material to share with you on two kind of unrelated topics. The first one that we're going to really get to is the CISA guidance that came out a couple weeks ago, and it kind of got buried. I've not heard a lot of people talk about it, write about it, because it kind of got buried by another story that came out at roughly the same time. But we're going to be talking about the CISA guidance for MSPs, give you a little bit of backstory on what you should be doing, and what that means for all MSPs. And then we're going to talk for the remainder of the program about a potential recession and what that looks like. And as I'm at the time of this recording, looks like we're officially in a bear market in the U.S. stock market. Not sure how the other markets are trading globally, but we've been down. Safe to say most of the markets globally have been down for the last weeks and months. If, this is not saying it's guaranteed, but if there is a recession, how is that going to impact your MSP business? A lot of you may be thinking about that, and I understand that. I think about it a lot. Anytime we have ups or downs in the market, I think, well, how is it going to really impact MSPs? And so we've got some analysis about that, and we've got some data to share with you, not just our opinion here about what we think is going to happen, but we also have some data that I think bolsters and really supports that notion of if a recession happens, this is probably what you as MSPs can expect, and this is what you as MSPs ought to be doing to prepare for that eventuality. And that includes also what you should be giving in terms of guidance to your customers, because obviously that's very much integrated with you as MSPs, is your information and your relationship with customers. So those are the two main topics for today. I'm going to just dive right in. If you have not been paying attention for the last several weeks, you might have missed this bulletin. It came out in May 11. A week and a half ago, something like that, almost 2 weeks. And the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, that's what their acronym is. They are part of the United States federal government. They are largely tasked with, I think singularly tasked with, looking at cybersecurity threats and infrastructure to the country. So they're not, like every department in the United States government has, kind of different divisions that will cover similar areas. And same is true with many countries around the world. The CISA is aimed at, the country as a whole, both government as well as private sector. And so they give frequently these types of advisory bulletins. They give, threat updates, malware updates. They give patching updates. So it's pretty good information. And this time, the CISA, along with, I think, 4 of their other counterparts, which are collectively known as the Five Eyes, right? This is the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. Yeah, that's 5. They're the Five Eyes, which they're those 5 countries and their respective intel communities all pool resources, essentially. They do a lot more than that, but they've all come together and issued this bulletin, and it's specific to MSPs. CISA joins partners to release advisory on protecting MSPs and their customers. That is the title from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So what do they have to say? Well, they're saying some things that I think are really important to hear, and I think it's really good that the CISA is out there promoting this education and awareness, because this has honestly been something that we here at the MSP Alliance have been doing for 22 years. And I think the CISA probably understands that these are not groundbreaking things. They don't say this. I'm editorializing and giving you my opinion on what I think they're coming out, because they all know that MFA is important, right? So MFA is one of the several areas of advisory that they're bringing to everyone's attention. Specifically, and I'm quoting here from the bulletin, enforce MFA, multi-factor authentication, on MSP accounts that access the customer environment and monitor for unexplained failed authentication. These are things that the professional grade MSP community has been doing for a long time. If you possess an MSP Verify certification or audit report, you are doing this, or you are tested against that standard, among many others. That this would be more of a control, more of a process requirement. Some of the other ones listed here in the bulletin are identify and disable accounts that are no longer in use. Very, very smart. And ensure MSP customer contracts transparently identify ownership of information and communications technology, security roles, and responsibilities. I was actually pretty stunned by seeing that, because that's one of the first times outside of the MSP Verify where contractual the use of a contract has actually come up as guidance. And so I was looking at that. I was like, wow, this either the CISA is reading our stuff, which could be, but it doesn't matter where they got it. The point is they're encouraging adoption of some things that we very much agree with here at the MSP Alliance, and they are further encouraging MSPs and their customers. They're encouraging their customers who use MSPs to have their MSPs start to implement some of these controls. We wholeheartedly agree with that. Furthermore, we have been advocating for this since 2004, when the first standard that is today now the MSP Verify was developed by a group of, I would say, very prescient, advanced thinking, forward-thinking MSPs at the time. And that work that they did back in 2004 laid the groundwork that, of all the terrific things that we do today with the certification and all the MSPs that get certified throughout the world. These are very, very commonly, routinely tested controls and policies and procedures. These are best practices. And so to have kind of validation from CISA that, hey, this is where you ought to be going. Again, I don't know if they were, have been listening to us. Maybe they have been. Maybe they've been coming to MSP World conferences. and someone said, hey, take a look at MSP Verify. I don't know. They don't give us credit, and I'm not asking for credit. I'm just saying this is spot on stuff. So read it, have your customers read it, tell your customers, especially if you're an MSP Verify company, share this from the United States CISA, and then say to them, hey, by the way, this is what we do as an MSP Verified company to protect you and to protect us as we protect you. That's a really powerful thing. And so I just thought it was a really, really cool thing to see that kind of validated out there by a group like CISA. So keep up the great work, guys and gals. Moving on. Recession. No recession. Who the hell knows what is going to happen? I don't. Someone probably said, this sounds like someone famous would have said, the markets go up, the markets go down. Yeah. Predicting it, though, who can predict it? I have no idea where we're headed. We've talked about inflation in the past in this program. We've talked about headwinds with inflationary pressures and pressures on wages and the scarcity of tech workers, which actually we're going to talk about tech workers here in a moment. There's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of headwinds, economic headwinds that MSPs and their customers face, especially today. And I'm going to say this, having been through 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 major economic cycles. So Y2K, the dot-com fall, 9/11, the housing crash and the economic ation, whatever, panic, the global financial crisis that we faced in 2009, 2010. And, who knows today? Hopefully if we go into a recession, hopefully it's a mild one and we get out of it really quick. But those past economic environments we've been in while they have, certainly had an impact on some MSPs and certainly had an impact on some of their customers, on the whole, the MSP community worldwide have done very well, and I would say even have thrived in many of those economic downturns. Why would that happen when most other industries would do poorly? Well, for example, banks, realtors, mortgage companies in the 2009-2010 financial crisis did very poorly, right? They got hurt very badly. If you were an MSP focused on that sector, you would also have been similarly hurt or impacted in a negative way. Aside from that, when you have those global, widespread economic downturns, you typically see, except in those limited circumstances, other MSPs, the majority of MSPs, who are doing quite well. Why? Because when you have difficult times economically and customers, whatever customer segment you're in, they turn to MSPs because it's a far more stable, flexible way to govern through a financial crisis. And I'm speaking of the ability to swing up and down, to modulate your buying habits from an IT standpoint, not just procurement, but also stabilizing your IT spend in a very difficult financial period. That is one of the hallmarks. We've talked about that for many, many years, right? The benefit of an MSP are numerous. One of them is a financial benefit of being able to streamline the cost, the expense of IT management across the board so that you have, instead of an erratic expenditure line, which is always associated with a break-fix reactive IT management model, when you have a proactive IT management model, i.e. managed services, you typically have a flat line, or you have a line with a projected growth of some modest amount, dipped in with some peaks here and there for projects, but it's very manageable. It's very predictable. You can budget for it. And that's why people and companies like managed services. From a financial standpoint, forget the many other technical and security benefits. So how does a recession impact MSPs? Well, every recession, every financial downturn period tends to have its own unique issue, right? Or unique characteristics. So, for example, I'll give you a great one. During 9/11 and the Iraq War, and kind of that period immediately after Y2K and 9/11, you had some real financial difficult periods where if you were a MSP focused on security and banks, you did really well. But fast forward to 2009, 2010, in the housing caused economic downturn, those same MSPs who were really highly leveraged only on banks might have done a little bit less. Now, I'm not saying that they were doing badly. I'm not saying that at all, because typically most MSPs who focus on banks, the banks aren't going anywhere. The banks aren't stopping their IT spend. In fact, the IT spend, the security spend is inching upwards. All right, that's what the CISA guidance, right? CISA guidance is all aimed at educating more and more collaboration and work being done on bolstering the internal IT and security readiness of organizations everywhere. So it's very different, recession to recession or economic downturn to economic downturn. Everyone's going to have a slightly different area impacted. The pandemic, I'll give you another great example. The pandemic we just went through. Unlike previous times, the banks didn't really have an impact in terms of a financial impact. Unlike hospitality, travel, right? They got very seriously damaged in the pandemic. In previous economic downturns, they weren't impacted in any significant way like they were during the pandemic. So you see, it just really depends on how each sector goes. But what I'm saying is, generally speaking, the more diversified you are and the more diversified amongst highly regulated and highly educated customers who understand the value of managed services, you should do fairly well, especially in economically uncertain times. All right, so you're saying, well, Charles, that's really well and good. That's just your opinion, man. So how do we know that that's true? Well, if you don't believe me, I'll give you a few articles that might fuel, what I just said and make you, believe in that. Number one, it's a dark reading article. And this one is actually, May 17th. So not that far, this week. So it just came out, hot off the presses. The title of this article is New Venture Capital Fund Focuses on Emerging Cybersecurity Tech. And it is a group that has now put together $300 million in an investment fund, all focused on cybersecurity technology, which, if you know anything about cybersecurity, you will know that it is almost guaranteed that technology, hardware, software, or services will make its way and involve in some significant way the MSP community globally. $300 million in a new venture capital fund aimed just at tech, cybersecurity tech. Exhibit A in my opening case. Next, an article from Forbes magazine. This one is dated May 18th, also this week. I'm giving you really relevant information, folks. I hope you appreciate that. Forbes magazine title is Cybersecurity Players Should Do Well Despite Economic Headwinds. So what they're saying is, despite cybersecurity stocks or companies in the NASDAQ or in the New York Stock Exchange or wherever these publicly traded companies are traded, despite what their stocks are doing, what they're saying is that cybersecurity related spending will remain very strong even throughout a recessionary period. Doubt what I'm saying? I will quote to you from the Forbes article. Quote, while there have been concerns that the United States could be headed for a recession, with Q1 GDP already shrinking year over year, we think cybersecurity-related spending will remain a priority for businesses and the government for a couple of reasons. And then they go on and they list those reasons. Government reasons for continued spending, private sector reasons for continued private sector spending. That, I think, coupled with the dark reading article, are really telling in the span of the same week, just a day apart. I think those two articles came out. Two articles, and there's probably more. I could probably, if I spent a few minutes doing some more research, I'd probably find half a dozen more articles similar to that. The point is, I'm not the only one, and we at the MSP Alliance here are not the only ones thinking this is necessarily true or likely true. We have past precedent to look to in our guidance. And folks, again, I'm saying I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if we're going to go into a recession or not. What I am saying, though, is you ought to be prepared for recession or not. You ought to be prepared for further attention and spending in and around cybersecurity and cyber-related managed services. And those types of things will prepare you quite well for dealing with your customers, helping them through this difficult period. You as an MSP should do quite well, and you helping your customers, they should do quite well as well, or as well as could be expected, at least from an IT standpoint. I am fairly bullish when it comes to managed services, and I look at these periodic downturns as, yes, I'm realistic about them. They do have an impact. They can be, have very negative impacts on all of us. So I'm not saying that that's not real. But what I'm saying is, as an impact overall on the global managed services community, they tend to be mild, and they tend to have far more pervasive benefits than they do negatives, if that makes sense. These recessionary periods really tend to accentuate the value of an MSP. It drives home for the customer who says, wow, I'm prohibited from doing these things that I want to do on my own, but if I have my MSP with me, I can do a lot more. And that's why I think managed services tends to see huge spikes during recessionary periods. Now, if you're a break-fix company, wow, you're in another boat, right? I can't help you there. I'm talking about the MSPs. If you're a real MSP, then you're probably in a fairly good position for whatever comes in the near future. If you are not prepared on the cybersecurity front, well, that's another area that you ought to probably pay attention to and start fixing like right now, like today, like this weekend. Don't wait. Now. hopefully we've made that message quite clear over the last several years. And if you don't believe me, then read the CISA guidance bulletin. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Could be wrong, but I don't think so. I've witnessed personally and talked to many MSPs throughout each of these periods, and so they all say similar things at the end of them or in the middle of them. And it doesn't mean that it won't have, like I said, some difficult times potentially. But all in all, being a managed service provider in a recessionary period, it's a pretty good field to be in, all things being equal. Love to hear your thoughts. You guys think there's a recession coming? You're not worried about it? Love to hear your thoughts. Drop us a note. If you want to join the program, share your thoughts on the record. Love to have you. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you will get notified when future episodes are released. We will see you next time in the MSP Zone.